Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Adoption Happy Hour, brought to you by NAAP. We are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to elevate our diverse voices by promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connection. I'm Marcie Keithley, your host for the evening, along with Beth Story and Jennifer Falsing in the Zoom room helping out. So we want to welcome everybody. If this is your first time, please let us know that also in the chat room. But before we introduce our guests, we've got a few housekeeping items. We want to remind everyone this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. If you don't follow us on Adoption Happy Hour on Facebook, please do so. That's where Lily's replay will be listed. Please remain on mute, raise your virtual hand, or reach out in the chat room to be recognized. You're welcome to post questions and comments, but we will record this portion up to 8 o'clock, stop the recording, and then open it up for a Q&A. If you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thought, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988. And Beth, do we have some announcements?
We do. This is our lineup of regular programming. Happy Hour is normally the first and third Friday. In September, it will be the second and fourth due to Labor Day weekend and then the mini meetup, but we will remind you of that a lot of times. And I do want to remind you that if you have attended any of these meetings, you will get invited to all of the future ones by email. So watch your email for things from Eventbrite. I will often just go to my email and stick Eventbrite in a search, and all of the invitations for any of our programming will come up that way. Dr. Joyce was last week. Amber was, I think, the week before. So we would have Danielle Gaudette coming up on the 24th of this month. And then, of course, we will hop into September.
Excuse me just a second. Somebody's not on mute.
Where I am.
Just a second. I can fix that probably. Well, maybe not. Maybe not while I'm sharing.
I'm a beast. Having this girl say fine.
It's Tammy Murphy that's not on mute.
I got it.
Got it.
Thanks.
Well, I'm trying.
Okay.
So, the mini meetup, September 15th and 16th, Pokagon State Park. We need some more attendees, guys. This is what it looks like there. The beautiful lake, a pool inside. It is a very cozy, comfortable setting. And we had our mini meetup there last year, and everybody who was there loved it. So we need some more folks to register. And here is what will be going on. Patricia Knightmeyer is our keynote speaker. She will be speaking twice. Then we have several others from our community who will be sharing briefly about healing strategies that have helped them. And we are very excited also to have Lorraine Dusky, author of Hole in My Heart. We're going to have several blocks of free time. And during one of those blocks of free time, Lorraine is going to host a book club discussion. And Hole in My Heart is an incredible book. It's not only her story, her birth mother's story, but she weaves so much research and adoption related information into it that it is just a really groundbreaking work. So we are happy to have her coming in. We're going to put some information in the chat about how to register. The room block did expire, but we reserved several extra rooms. So you come to us, you pay the discounted rate, you're going to get one of those. And we are also announcing tonight that we're running a special. We are running a special of one full price registration and get a second one for 40% off. So you bring your mom, your birth mom, your adopted mom, you bring your friend, your husband, whatever. We will put information about that in the chat. We just need a few more people to make us have a really, really great weekend. So look a little bit later in the chat for some of that information. And I think that's all I have.
That's it for you, Beth?
Yes.
Jen, do you have anything? Do you want to update everybody about what took place this week? Take two minutes for that.
Sorry, were you talking to me? I'm
Yes.
driving down the road. Okay. So Beth Story, myself, Lynn Grubb, who some of you may know, Ann McKessa, Gay Sherman Tannenbaum, and Cara Rubenstein Dyron from Right to Know. We were just down in Indianapolis. We spent 3 days at the National Conference of State Legislators. We actually had a booth at the great location. We made some really great connections with several legislators that actually want to do bills for us. So I think we've got 4 states where we have a legislator that said, yes, let's get something done. So that was worth the whole thing. But then we also got to meet other people who were like, hey, this is what I do. I would like to do a webinar for you guys. I'd like to come to your event. So we had a really good, productive time, met a lot of people, and we will be back doing this again next year in Louisville.
Yay! Excited. I'm excited. My backyard. Okay, thanks, Jen. Okay, let's get on with it. So I want to welcome Lily Wood to Adoption Happy Hour. Lily, yep, great. Thanks for taking yourself off mute. How are you tonight?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me here. This is great.
We're so excited to have you. So before we get started, I'd just like to briefly update our attendees just a little bit about you, okay? Adoption and Mental Health Memoir Lily Wood, host of NPE Stories, is a stay-at-home mom of 3 children. When she found out she was an NPE, the only thing that made her feel better was hearing others share their story. The NPE Stories podcast was created as a safe and supportive space for NPEs, LDAs, and DCPs to share their entire DNA surprise story while listeners nod along. To date, it has been downloaded over 400,000 times. Wow. In addition to raising her family, Lily volunteers in the NPE community in a variety of ways, hoping to create more societal empathy for those seeking to learn more about their genetic identity. So welcome, Lily, to Happy Hour.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, I'm Lily Wood. I wanted to talk a little bit about my story, finding out I was an NPE 4 years ago, and I'll explain those terms. Any other acronyms that I may say, I'll try to say the full word for them. But Marcie, feel free to interrupt me if I don't define something clearly, or if anything comes up in the chat. After I talk about my DNA discovery 4 years ago, I thought I would spend some time talking about my podcast as well. So can I just go ahead and share my screen right now?
You can.
Okay.
And I think it's, we could probably start out too, Lily, by talking a little bit about how you're here on Happy Hour and how we met and at the intersections of our communities. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I would love that. That's Marcie, I have worked with Right to Know, volunteering with that organization and being part of one of their developmental boards a few years ago. And they started to work with you, Cara, and the other members of Right to Know, forming the Untangling Our Roots Summit, or that's where I can remember the first time that I've heard of your name in the community, but that was the first time that I met you, was at that summit was it already last spring? When did we do that? I had been to a retreat before for late discovery adoptees, late discovery donor conceived individuals, and NPEs. And there was actually adoptees as well. It was called Hiraeth Hope and Healing Retreat. I think I might be saying that wrong. Hiraeth Hope and Healing Retreat. And then from there, I was like, when I was surrounded by so many other people with similar stories, I'm like, I have to do this again. And I came to Untangling Our Roots last spring, and it was an amazing experience for me. I met you, I think, out near the book signing tables, and I briefly met Jennifer as well, and I'm sure I saw Beth there. That's where I met Ridge House. I recognize some friendly faces here tonight.
And we're excited to have you. Okay. So what is an NPE for those of
Well,
us
yes.
that don't know? Let's
Yes.
just start right there.
NPE. So in our community, we have a more casual definition of it. It's not parent expected. It comes from a genealogical term for non-paternal event or non-paternity event. And this was when your family tree shows basically a mistake in that your paternal side, you're not related to one of your parents. So it comes from a larger umbrella term, MPE, misattributed parentage experience. And so in our community, we kind of use both of those names similarly. We've found out actually that we have a lot of intersection with adoptees. I believe you were part of that, right? Realizing we have a lot of that same wanting to know our true genetic truth, wanting to know our who our parents were, who our family members were, and then dealing with everything thereafter. In my case, rejection or welcoming new family members and all the dynamics that come into that as an adult. Anyway, so I do have that as a screen. Can I go ahead and share it now? Right. I can find it. Okay. There's the terms for NPE just laid out if you needed to see. So I am an NPE. That means I found out late in life I wasn't related to my dad, and therefore half my family, how I knew them to be, wasn't what I thought it was. And I thought I'd just share a little bit about my original family, because that's what I do. Oops, I went too far. This is kind of what I do in my podcast when I have people come on, is I have them share their stories and they start at the beginning. So I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is where I was born. I was born in 1981. I am the smaller child here. I'm the younger sister. I have an older sister. We have white European background, so you can't tell a large difference, but I thought in these pictures you could see my sister is, slightly darker features than me. And the middle picture is my birth certificate father. That's another, I don't know if you use that term. That's a term we use, and meaning that's who I thought was my dad. I still call him dad to this day. I still consider him my dad. He's actually not related to me, but I didn't know that initially. He has French heritage, and him and all of his sisters are darker featured. My sister Angela is 3.5 years older than me. I never had any idea that she wasn't my full sibling growing up. My dad, he had me 2 weekends a month. My parents were divorced when I have zero memory of them ever being together. So I think they had a terrible marriage, and she got pregnant with me. I think they were on their way to a divorce, and they decided to reconcile and make it work a few more months. But obviously it wasn't a great marriage, because my mom actually had me with another man, although I didn't know that at the time. So my dad, just to give you an idea of what he is like, he is very charming. He's very sarcastic. He's super funny, but he's not a responsible man by any means. And I think he would admit that if he were here. My dad he used to take me to parks when I was little, and he would light a joint and blow it while he was pushing us on the swings at like 10 o'clock at night. We didn't know, he just called it Daddy's cigar, and he told us he was trying to keep the bugs away. So he's that sort of dad. Very funny, but not appropriate. He's not an appropriate man. I don't have an incredibly close relationship with him. And so we do the best we can as adults, but I see him about once a month, and I'm good with that. We have that sort of relationship, and that's probably as close as we'll be. My sister, when we were kids, I would say that she was probably considered the black sheep, and I was the golden child. I'm very hypervigilant because my parents were volatile in their own ways. And so I learned really quickly how to read a room when I was a kid. I would go into a room and I would immediately be able to tell if my dad was in a rageful mood and if I needed to be super sweet or get out of his way. With my mom, she would give me the silent treatment for long, long periods of time, and I would have to kind of guess what I did wrong. So for some reason, my sister was always treated as the black sheep, and I took on this golden child, or this helper, this assistant role. That has all changed. I'm currently in scapegoat status, but I was definitely a picture perfect child, and I presented myself to my parents the way that I thought I needed to be, and the way that I thought they wanted me to be, so that I could feel loved. My mom, she's on the left, and I found this picture. It's a little hard to look at a picture of her looking at me adoringly. I'm a baby there. This is one of the only pictures I can find where she was really, truly showing me so much love. When I was small and cute, I think she really enjoyed having me when I was a baby and when I was a toddler. My mom is a person who gets easily overwhelmed. And I do too. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I totally understand that. But she's the sort of woman who, I guess you would say, needs a lot of me time. She needs a lot of quiet time. And that's fine. I understand, being overly stimulated and needing to have a break. But this was almost to the point of neglect growing up. She was lucky enough to find my stepdad. It's the picture on the right. That gentleman's older. My stepdad was the one true loving parent I ever had growing up. She married him when I was 4, and he took care of me when I was sick. My mom could not handle a sick child. He read books to me. He took me shopping. He made meals. He is absolutely a very nurturing, loving man. And I miss him a lot. My stepdad is my mom's #1 protector and enabler. Although he's very loving and nurturing and caring, he will also keep her secrets. And that included keeping a secret from me about the truth of who my true parents were. So let's see. I think that gives you an idea. I don't know if this matters, but my mom is, I don't know if I can call her a hypochondriac, but I think I can't diagnose anyone, but I think she potentially has, like a borderline personality disorder. She suffers a lot of ailments. And so when you're around her, you feel the need to take care of her, or I did. Can I fluff your pillow? Do you need more coffee, Mom? What can I get you? I just play that helper assistant role because she's always in agony, and she has back problems. She has migraine problems. She has lots and lots of issues. And so we all learned to take care of my mother growing up, and there was never really any space for anyone else to have needs because she needed a lot. She spent a lot of time watching TV and being alone. And, maybe, I'm thinking about it. Maybe she really does have these ailments. I don't want to say she doesn't, but I'm not sure why she had children. Because children require a selflessness. They require, you have to put their needs before yours. And now that I'm a mom, I can understand how important children's needs are, and to be there for them when they're sick in the middle of the night, and to be able to listen to them no matter how tired you are. When I had surgery when I was a teenager, it was a very scary situation at the time. It was an emergency surgery on my leg. I had a mass in my leg that popped up. It was a tumor, and they went in for an emergency surgery. I was 14 years old, and I was scared to death, and I've never had surgery, and I've never been under general anesthesia. And I woke up probably 2 or 3 in the morning in the recovery room. I've never been in a hospital before. And you know what it's like when you're coming out of general anesthesia, you feel nauseous and you're confused, and there's nurses around. And I asked them, once I could finally talk again, where my mom was. And they said she went home. She was tired and she went home. And as a mom, I have a 14-year-old now. I couldn't imagine my kid's first night in the hospital and the first time ever having surgery, not waiting around for them to come out of, being put under. So that's how my mom is, though. She needs her rest. I think it skipped a page. I need to press the button slower. Let me try this again. Oh boy, it's skipping. Okay, one more slide. One more slide. Got it. Okay. All right. So in 2019, I took a DNA test. Most people say for fun. I took mine for health reasons. I'm a health nut. I took the 23andMe test because it has all these really interesting health markers. I did tell my mom I was taking it, and she was, oh well, big brother, you don't want to take that. You don't want them to get your information, which companies are not allowed to do, by the way. But that was her. That's what she told me her belief was, but I didn't think anything more of it. What I found was that, and I don't have a picture of it, is that I had a significant amount of Sicilian heritage, which was a little confusing because I have a French dad and a Norwegian mother. They're American, but French ancestry and Norwegian ancestry. So I figured I'd have about a 50-50 mix of that. And I had 0% French. That was really confusing. The health markers were somewhat interesting, I guess. I mentioned this to my dad and my sister just casually. And my sister said, well, I took Ancestry, which is the other large database, because I had taken 23andMe. And she said, I have 50% Norwegian and about 40-some% French. So we went through, well, maybe the technician got a hair in the test tube. Maybe there's just variations. Maybe it's human error. Is this a scam? Are these companies just trying to get our money and just making up things? Like my brain tried to rationalize, how could we have different compositions? She said, we need to take the same company's test. Well, I had just spent my $100 and she'd spent hers. And of course, being the golden child I am, I was like, fine, I'll take another test and I'll use Ancestry just like you. 4 months later, I finally got around to doing it. And so these are my results. My sister's Angela. She's the second result. And if you know centimorgans, I feel within this community, you guys probably understand DNA tests, but 1,600 centimorgans is about a half sibling match, and around 3,500 or somewhere around there, I don't have the chart in front of me, is a full sibling. I didn't understand centimorgans at all when I got this, but something looked wrong because right below her name is someone named Tim Conley, and he also has about 1,300 or 1,400 centimorgans. So I am just almost as related to this unknown stranger to me as my sister. I got in the car and I texted my mom. I said, I'm coming over to talk to you. I'm really confused. I talked to my sister as well. And Angela said, well, look at the shared matches. Look at Auntie Adele is showing up. Auntie B is showing up. These are all my dad's sisters. I had none of my dad's family members showing up in my DNA matches. And instead I had a ton of Conleys, a last name I've never heard of. I'm very close with my family. I'm the youngest of 27 grandchildren. I know my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. This made no sense to me whatsoever. So I went to my mom's house. She said, am I in trouble? I was like, no, let's just have a nice chat. I said, who in the family is the last name Conley? I don't know any Conleys. And Angela and I aren't showing up very related. And this Tim Conley is showing up and Dan Conley. And I was so confused. I really had no idea this was coming. And then she just looked at me, and my stepdad was in the room as well. And she said, in the 80s, I worked with Bill Conley at Federal Express. And I don't know who this was. I don't know what she's talking about. And her face just got super red. She looked like a combination of embarrassed and ashamed and shocked. And that I had to pick apart that sentence. And I was like, I'm related to someone you worked with the last name Conley. And I said, did you sleep with this man? And she said, I only had sex with him once or twice, but he was my boss. And so immediately she's putting into my head that this man is, in a position of power. And I said, did he rape you? What is this? Are you saying this man is my dad? And she laughed and dismissed me immediately and told me, oh, Lily, your dad is still your dad. Immediately trying to shut me down because she doesn't want, I can't have reactions safely in her presence. I rarely showed emotion around her. I'm in total shock. And then she starts laughing and she said, you mean I could have gotten more child support? She wanted to laugh this off. And it was the most terrible experience of my life. My stepdad's in the corner, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I heard him, but I didn't register it. And he said out loud to my mom, you never thought this would come back to bite you, did you? Later, when I replayed that moment, as I've done so many times, I realized they've talked about this before. He knows something. So my mom was no help at all. My world is falling apart, and she's not going to provide me with any comfort or apology. I don't think doesn't hug. So I get up and get ready to leave. I said, is this man still alive? Did he rape you? Nope, it was consensual. So I have to find out who this man is, and I decide to leave. And my stepdad follows me outside to the driveway. And he says, now, if I had ever known there was any proof of this, I would have made her tell you. And, this was never proven. So he does hug me as I get in my car to leave. That also to me showed that my stepdad did know about this as well, or at least suspected it, right? So I realized, I did also say to my mom, I made a mistake in that moment. I said, does dad know? And she said, no. And I said, well, you have to be the one to tell him. And that was probably one of many mistakes I've made. I made a ton of mistakes in this. I have no idea what I'm doing. I realized then that, not then, but later I realized I lost the narrative, and she could tell him any story she wanted when I let her break the news to him. That was a mistake I made, and I wish I'd handled that differently, but that's in the past. I went and called my sister and told her, and she was shocked as well, and immediately started to protect my mother, because we're just trained to protect our mom, I called my husband finally, and that finally with that fourth person, I started to get some comfort and some reassurance. Are you okay? I'm coming home from work right now. And he came home and took care of me and helped me. And I researched Bill Conley, and he was alive. I emailed him, and he said, I do remember your mother. I think that there is some things we can clarify, and we'll take care of this. And I thought, okay, this is a good man. This is a nice email. We're going to have some resolution here. He doesn't seem crazy. He doesn't seem too scary. Hopefully I'll have a good conversation with him. He said he was out of the country and he'd be in touch with me. I didn't hear from him for weeks. And then, let's see here. I have a picture of him actually. Okay. I just found this picture a few months ago. This is so strange. My mother kept this picture, but considering she had a child with this man, now I could see why she did keep this picture. So in the middle is a man, and this is my true biological father. His name is Bill. And on the right is my mother. I believe this was taken on the business trip in which I was conceived. My mother told me she used to take Federal Express private jets back and forth to Memphis, where Federal Express was headquartered. My mother was 30 years old. She was a grown woman. She had resources. She was in executive sales. She had already a 3.5-year-old child and had been married to my dad probably 3, 4, 5 years, somewhere around this time. So, and I should make it clear, doesn't actually bother me that my mom had an affair with this man. I mean, I'm not trying to give away opinions here. She had a terrible marriage with my dad. My dad does not treat women well. He never has. He hasn't treated women well. He's been a bachelor for 40 years. So I don't fault my mom for sleeping with my biological father. It's the fact that she didn't tell me he was my biological father. And I also found out I had a brother and a sister. I've never met them. They've never returned my messages or my emails. My birth father, Bill, in the middle, after this, something changed. After that first really nice initial email, something changed, and he got very cold the next time I talked to him a few weeks later. I think he had some shame, and I think he was trying to keep it from his current wife. I can't fully understand, but all of a sudden I think he'd had a conversation with my mom, and he seemed to be mad at me that I was a bit of a troublemaker. And he used the words, I don't throw my family under the bus, and we don't do shock and awe in my family. We don't do drama. And my whole world had just been torn apart. So I was really confused by what I was doing wrong by trying to find out who my family was. I think he was very mad that I had messaged his children, my siblings, by the way. I think he had started to think more about how this would affect his life, his image. He is a former president of Federal Express in Singapore. And I think he was starting to get scared and probably ashamed. So that relationship went nowhere. My mom wrote some weird mass email to the family with a paragraph that was really nice to every single member. And the last paragraph was to me. And to me, she said, Lily, you and I have always had troubles and we've never gotten along. And I'm not sure what you're doing, stirring this up in the family. But basically she chastised and scolded me. And it was the strangest email because I wouldn't say we had a bad relationship. I always did exactly what she wanted my whole life. I don't anymore, but I always did up until that point 4 years ago. I started to have panic attacks, and I'd never had one before. So the first time I had one was at 3 a.m. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was dying. I don't know if anyone's ever had a panic attack. It really, in the moment, truly feels like you're dying. It was terrible. I found a therapist trying to help me with whatever was going on. I lost the ability to read. I had always been a voracious reader. I couldn't read. Trying to watch movies with my kids and my husband, I couldn't pay attention. I couldn't concentrate. I didn't know what was going on. Everything was a mess. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. It was terrible. And that was April 9th, 2019. So April 9th, 2019, I discovered this, and I somehow found this word NPE. Oh, I know what it was. A friend told me. She said, I also have taken a DNA test and found out my dad is not my dad. You are called an NPE. So I'm Googling everything I could find. At the time, I never thought to go into the adoptee community with what I was going with, reaching out to these new family members and experiencing rejection. I didn't know what anything was called. My brain wasn't working very well. I found these wonderful Facebook forums, and I started finding Severance Magazine. I didn't find any podcasts at the time, hence why I made one, but these forums I just spent hours on reading people's stories. Here's my story. Here's my story. Here's my story. And I would scroll, and I can't look at blue light all the time. I can't just be addicted to my screens all the time. It's so easy to do that. So I thought if I could just listen to other people share their story and their experience, this would make me feel so much better while I'm commuting with my children, while I'm washing dishes, doing laundry. I could just put my phone in my back pocket if I could just hear these stories, because I just want to hear other people going through the same thing as me right now. That was the only thing that could get me through those first few days. Well, it was for months, actually. It wasn't just the first few days. Let me just read this. Okay, so I said, I want to hear other people's stories, but I don't want to share mine. So I created a trailer on Apple Podcasts saying if anyone else wants to share their NPE discovery, I'm launching in July of 2019. I'd love to have people on share their stories. And no one emailed me back, right? Nobody did. There's this rule in one of these very large Facebook groups I'm on. I won't mention it. It's a very large Facebook group, and you cannot do any self-promotion, and you cannot message them. And they were my only lifeline at the time, and I was scared to death of getting kicked out of there. So I didn't ask anyone to come on and share their story. But I went on Reddit, and I found one person to share the very first episode. And thank goodness he did, because he didn't know who I was. I could have been a scammer. He shared that first episode, and it felt so good to listen to him. He was an NPE. And from there, after that first episode aired, I put, an NPE Stories at gmail.com as the way to get in touch with me. And I asked if anyone else wanted to share, would they be willing? And that's when the emails started coming in. My podcast, it's just a safe space and no judgment for people to share their story. There's no one right way to handle this. There's no, you have to contact this person or you have to keep it secret. There's no judgment. There's no opinion. It's just people sharing their experience of what happened to them, finding out that they aren't related to one or both of their parents and what life has been like for them. So I have on NPEs, I have on late discovery adoptees and late discovery donor conceived persons. I just actually had an individual today at noon come on. She's a late discovery donor conceived individual. She found out her mom's doctor artificially inseminated her mom with his sperm, a fresh sample. And she just found this out 5 years ago. And so these are the sorts of people that come on and share their story, DNA discovery stories. Let's see. All right, just trying to switch this here. Oh, I should also mention that first year, I refused to give my name, my full name. So while all this is happening and I'm creating a podcast, I'm still in like utter turmoil. I'm in agony, right? I have no idea what I'm doing. So I thought I will launch this podcast. I'll just be an anonymous secret host. I will go by my first name, Lily, but that's it. I don't want my last name. I'm also kind of somewhat interacting with Bill Conley. I'm hoping my siblings will reach out to me. I want their approval. I want them to love me. I want to be accepted. I want to meet them. So I thought if I associate my name with this and they find out about it, they'll definitely reject me. So I kept my mother's secret that first year. And I'm completely out now, but oops, trying to change the slide. Press the button. So after, I look angry there. After a year of doing this podcast, and I have just wonderful people on, NBC Universal producers contact me, and this would have been, January, February. It was right before the big part of the pandemic hit in 2020. And their interns are listening to the podcast, and they wanted to do a story with me, and they did. And Cassandra Adams as well was on it. She's an advocate in the assisted reproductive community. But there was a problem in that I'm anonymous. So I decide, if other people are so brave in coming on my podcast, I need to be willing to share my full story. Why am I keeping this secret? This is so weird. And so that when the documentary came out, which was March 10th, 2020, so no one saw it, because on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization issued COVID-19 a pandemic. Thank goodness. I was so afraid of my family seeing this. I don't care anymore. But I finally came out on my podcast 1 or 2 seasons in and said, by the way, my name is Lily Wood. I don't know why I was being weird about it. And I finally shared my own story because everyone else had been so brave sharing theirs. I thought, okay, I need to do an episode. So I think episode 21 or 27, somewhere around there, is mine. Oh yes, and I should say, at first I heard someone else use this word, so I stole these words. I was a secret keeper, trying to keep my mother's secret, but now I'm a seeker. So I liked how another person, I can't properly credit them, but I wanted to say that. Okay, I love this quote. Let me move it so I can read it. Anne Voskamp, if I'm saying that correctly. Shame dies when stories are told in safe places. So that's what I feel about every time I listen to a story. Anytime I go to a summit or a retreat and I hear someone share their story and it's in a safe space and no judgment, I'm nodding along with them. And that's kind of what I call my own little communities. We're just like a fellowship of nodding heads. It feels so good to listen to someone else. And me listening to people's stories every week, it just makes me nod along with them and feel so good. I have no fix for my situation. I'm estranged from my mom. I'm estranged from my stepdad. Some things happened, and unfortunately they weren't able to take any sort of accountability or responsibility. And I just couldn't imagine that I was really to be blamed for taking a DNA test and finding out I'm not related to my dad. The only thing that made me feel good was just volunteering. It was just service work. Doing this podcast, I would help out with other boards. I'm currently writing a co-author of a manuscript that has been rejected 9 times, but we're just constantly we're talking, it's actually about the deception of our family medical history and the role physicians play in that, especially them with their taking their Hippocratic oath of do no harm. So I'm just always trying to do service work because it keeps me somewhat sane. I'm still a mess, but it seems to feel better, and I think I've got a lot of people here that probably do a lot of service work. National Association of Adoptees and Parents, the other organizations, it's the only thing that just seems to make sense when nothing else makes sense. I already talked about the retreat and the summit. Oh, yes. So working on this podcast, I have also started to be a guest on other podcasts. Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis. That's another NPE podcast. Missing Pieces NPE Life with Don Anderson. They just, The Secret in My DNA. I'm going to be on DNA Surprises. It's been so healing to just collaborate and work with other people. And I'm a listener, so I don't actually like speaking. So I don't talk much, but I like to listen to others. And that's just makes me feel better. click. All right. Move this screen so I can read it. So here's a little bit more about NPE Stories, my podcast. It's not mine. It's for the NPE community. I don't have to be the host of this. I can easily pass off this podcast to anyone else. Anyone could guest host it. It's just it's an archive. I'm just a curator of stories. Anyone could do this. And a lot of other people have started really amazing podcasts. I realize some people don't listen to podcasts. That's fine. I'm a podcast listener. I like things in audio format. It just works with my lifestyle. My format is I just let people talk. I do touch on 3 main points. I like for them to explain what was their original family like. And then they go into, how did you find out you were an NPE? How did you feel? And then currently what's happening in your life? What has happened in your life since finding out you were an NPE? I've heard some beautiful, heartwarming stories, people having these welcome to the family parties where they show up and there's a cake and it says, it's a boy. And then they're welcomed by their new family members. People are lining up in a line to give them hugs and introduce themselves. I've heard stories like mine, terribly confusing rejection stories, cease and desist letters, don't contact me anymore. You're a con artist. What are you trying to get from us? Do you want our money? I've just heard of a wide variety of them. Switched at birth, non-consensual acts that have resulted in NPE children. Just every week is something different. And it's hard because I don't have any mental health training. And I make that very clear. This is not therapy. It's just a storytelling format. I have 171 episodes actually after today. Over the last 4 years, I'm on season 5. It's been downloaded, 430,000 times. I have a 50-person wait list because I go in order of emails received. I'm fair. So every time I get an email, as long as they're in the NPE community, I add them to the list. And I tell them it's going to be about a year-long wait, and then I check in with them again and I schedule them. I do 1 episode per week. I personally, nothing against this, I don't take sponsors. I've said no to advertising. I don't promote it. I know that's been a little confusing for some people when they've asked, oh, can we put a plug or a button for your podcast? But how it started was just purely, if someone needs to find it, they will. And sometimes people come in and they'll binge it for a couple of hard weeks and then they stop listening, and that's fine. It's there for when they need it. And, some people listen to a few, some people have listened to all 170. It's there for if this works for people, it's there. All right. Oh, my husband's theme song. I have a theme song. I told my husband, he does music for fun, electronic music production, just for fun. And I said, I want like a sad song. Will you make me a little bit of a sad song? And he made a couple, and I said, okay, I want a little bit, can you put some harp in it? Maybe a little violin. And he did, and tweaked it a little bit. And I just love my theme song so much. My husband's been really helpful with that. He was actually a guest on a podcast for spouses of NPEs a few months ago. He's not a natural speaker either. So he's been a part of it as well. My children, they always know when I'm recording or editing to try to be quiet. They're here right now. I'm alone with them. They're being quiet because they know I'm doing my thing right now. It's important to me. All right, one more slide, I think. Oh, this is the last slide. This is just my family and where I'm at currently. Although I'm estranged from most of my parents, I still have my sister and my dad in my life. I think having this happen to me has made me realize just how present and how much I need to show my children that I love them so much. To show them affection, even though that wasn't modeled to me as a child. We're having a back to school feast here in this picture. This is from last year. but school will be starting again here in a couple of weeks. So we'll have another one. The day after Labor Day, we'll have another back to school feast. I have some acceptance for where I'm at right now in my life. I never say never, though. I mean, I'm not opposed to my mother, my stepdad re-entering my life, but I can't do it as the scapegoat right now, not in that current status anymore. I want to model to my children healthy communication, healthy relationships, and I don't want them to be treated like dirt. So I have to model that I can't be treated poorly as well. So that's a little bit about my story, and I'm trying to remember if there's anything else about the podcast, but that's the end of my slideshow. So if you want to switch over to Q&A or wherever you want to go from here, Marcie, thank you for listening to that.
Well, thank you so much. And we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And yeah, I'll go ahead and stop. We're pretty much right on time. So I'll go ahead and stop